All right. So, Alan, you're up first with the FBI
Okay.
tracking people.
Yes, according to WUSA 9, a TV station in Washington,
Just
D.C.
a moment. This idiotic garbage. Okay, there. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, according to WUSA 9, a TV station in Washington, D.C., the FBI is paying people unexpected house calls if they were anywhere in the vicinity of the Capitol during the insurrection a few weeks ago. And the FBI was asked to comment on this and declined to do so. So we don't know any details, but presumably they have some kind of sweeping warrant that allows them to get data on anybody whose cell phone pinged a tower nearby the Capitol building on January 6th. So the FBI, even though it has not arrested very many people, certainly just a fraction of people who stormed the Capitol building, they are paying calls to people who live in Washington, D.C., and probably had nothing to do with the gathering on the 6th.
Yeah. Well, now, is that illegal? I thought they could get that kind of pen register data without a warrant.
Oh, well, maybe they don't even need a warrant. I'm not even clear on the state of the laws these days.
Well, I've seen claims like that, although those claims were, I think, when you asked about a specific person. Now, just asking for everybody who was in this area is another level of. I mean, I'd be interesting to see what they do in court, but I mean, I think also they could claim this is like terrorism and anti, you know, national security and stuff. So the Patriot Act would apply. Anyway, we'll see what comes of it.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see if this does indeed show up in any court cases. Apparently, the FBI agents, when they make these calls, are presenting it more as information gathering, like asking people if they saw anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That'd be another issue. So I don't know if this is illegal. I remember there's another thing that's been going on recently is that the FBI just buys stuff from public advertising databases.
Right, I've heard that. Yes, yeah.
And so I mean, it's not clear to me at all there's anything illegal going on here. But
No. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that anything illegal is happening here.
yeah, well, anyway, it sure would be nice if we understood who had our data and what they were allowed to do with it.
Yes, it's an ongoing problem for decades now.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, here we got homomorphic encryption. I was very interested to see this because I mean, I've been learning about homomorphic encryption and assigning it to my students, and it's appallingly slow, but this seems like a clever application of it. So I got the official Microsoft paper explaining this. What the point of homomorphic encryption is you can encrypt something and do some mathematical operation on it and get the answer without ever seeing the raw data that went in. So you could have encrypted numbers and add them up while they're encrypted and then get the total without knowing the numbers. So you could use it for something like anonymous voting. People could vote yes or no on something, and you get the number of yeses and the number of no's without knowing any individual votes. And so what Microsoft did was they're building an edge so you can connect it to an online database of stolen credentials. And when you put a password in the password storage here, it can send a hash of that up to the server and calculate whether it's in that database without ever sending your password anywhere or learning your password. That's the idea, or exposing the passwords in the database. So it's a pretty clever trick. And the thing that worried me is the speed of it, because I know homomorphic encryption is 1,000 times slower than other kinds of encryption. And it looks to me like they've carefully designed for all that work to be done on the server. You just send a hash up and back. So anyway, it's the first actual practical common use of homomorphic encryption I've seen. And everybody is pushing this really hard for medical data and other private data. So we'll probably be hearing a lot more about it. Anyway, then, yeah, preloaded with malware.
Yeah, so, you know,
list.
that's one way to teach kids about cybersecurity is give them laptops that are infected with malware. And I mean, this is like something out of a Monty Python sketch. I mean, get help with technology. Allow us to give you this preloaded machine that phones home to Russia. So that's what they did. And even more disturbing, it wasn't some like new cutting edge super stealth mode malware. It was a worm that's over 10 years old.
So if they just had any virus, it would have caught it, right?
One would think. Like I said, it wasn't anything new and revolutionary and cutting edge. So I mean, this is where you're not even doing basic due diligence. So it's a good idea to maybe do that before you send out all these machines.
But they bought brand new machines, right? Nobody checks brand new machines.
They did, and they did say in their update to the article that that in all of the known cases that the malware was removed once they turned the machines on at the school. But I mean, that's also, I mean, a pretty good way to say that we didn't know all of the machines that had it and some went out. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's actually been an old problem. They were infected picture flames. A whole lot of devices are sold with malware on them.
Yeah.
All right. And so Irvin, I remember this one. The security check would hack into.
Yep, the security check would help people set up their security and then add himself to the account.
Yeah.
And be able to access it whenever he wanted. Nobody knew until somebody complained about an issue, an unrelated issue, and then the technician was helping them said, "Hey, look, there's another email attached to this account." And that is what started triggering the search for what else does this person have access to, and then this all came out. It's really interesting that ADT never realized what was happening.
Yeah, I saw this article and I actually saw it on another site. And one of the things I thought was interesting was that some of the customers questioned the guy's email address, and he's like, "Oh, that's just there for testing purposes." And then they just let it go after he said that. And I'm like, that's a pretty good answer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's funny because at this place that I'm moving into, ADT keeps sending me spam like all the time. And
what's ADT?
That's the home security.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Liz, maybe the malware on the kid's computer is for testing purposes only.
Yeah, exactly. Just to teach them.
Well, and it's come out increasingly how many people have secret backdoor passwords on everything. As a matter of fact, it's not uncommon at all that the company has a secret backdoor password.
Right, but for a company in general, but this was a person who was adding themselves.
Well, I know, and then misusing it. Of course, remember this happened to, I think, Best Buy, right? They had Geek Squad, and all the people were stealing all the naked pictures off all the phones, all the laptops, and keeping them in a folder so they could share them. They just did it for years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a really major crime, but this has been going on for a long time.
It made me wonder too if this guy recorded any of the stuff and kept it for his own personal jollies.
I'm sure he did.
Yep.
And then you can upload it to like revenge porn sites. And
exactly.
You could dig yourself into like 30 years in prison really fast with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one would hope, but we'll see what happens. I mean, a lot of the time too, the penalties aren't very stiff for it either. So we'll see. One thing that's kind of cool that I found is that there are a couple of systems that you can get now that allow you to integrate all the existing, like say you have ADT in your house, and it allows you to use all of the existing sensors with a system that you control yourself, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. The one I hear advertised all the time is Simply Safe, but there must be a bunch of these monitoring services. Of course, that means, got to bring that back. But that means they have your, the company has access to all your data then, right?
Well, it depends on which one you use. Like there are some where you host it all yourself, and the only issue there is you're responsible for monitoring the alerts and calling the cops. Like they don't just send the cops out.
Yeah, but just thinking, if you had a home system and you put cameras all over the place, I wonder how many of the camera companies have access to that data. Anyway,
probably most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just trusting them not to abuse it, or maybe they're hoping you won't think of that.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're down to Kaitlyn with SonicWall. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of information about what exactly happened, but I just love it when a security product, leads to insecurity. So SonicWall makes a bunch of VPN products, and apparently there is a 0-day in the way that it handles VPN connections or VPN authentication. And so a bunch of their secure VPN firewalls are just vulnerable to these attackers. And so there's a few affected versions. They're called the SMA 100, the 200, the 210, 400, 410, and 500 virtual appliances. And anyway, yeah, so apparently they say, turn on two-factor authentication. So it must be a way in which the VPN handles passwords, I assume. But yeah, no, this is always fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is, I think, a huge issue in the security community is how much information you give out. There's a few people that have full disclosure of everything. A lot of people try to be really cagey like this so that they don't help people reverse engineer and figure out the attack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always on the side of more information is better. Even if you're giving the bad guys more information, because it makes everything more transparent about what's going on, what's being done to fix it, what can you do to secure your own network. But there is that attitude where you don't speak no evil, hear no evil.
In my experience, this goes with technical knowledge. The more technical you are, the more you want to know everything. The more non-technical you are, the more you figure you should just hide everything.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway,
I mean, a friend of mine, because I used to teach children, and she was very anti-nuclear everything, and she wanted me to not teach children about how nuclear energy worked, and I was like, I don't think that's very productive.
Yeah, they might make a nuclear bomb.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no, but that attitude is really common. Just try to hide stuff that sounds scary, and that's not the way you get past these issues. You educate people and you explain how it works and what you can do to make the world a better place.
Yeah, when I was a lad, it was all about sex education in schools. They're all like, no, don't tell them anything. And people said, well, that's not really the way to lead to the best outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there have been a lot of studies about sex education because obviously we are obsessed about that here.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure enough, the best way to make sure that kids don't have unsafe sex is to teach them how to have safe sex and not to have, just premarital sex in general or do dangerous things. And the outcome is generally better if you teach them.
I just heard a really wonderful podcast about the Violence Against Women Act. And they talked about how when they first wanted to pass it, Joe Biden was sort of in on it, although very clueless. He was on a committee and there was this room full of lawyers on another topic, and only one of them was a woman. He said, we should do something for women. Hey, you do something for the women. And then he walks out and she's like, but I'm like a tax lawyer. I don't know anything about this. They're like, President told you to do it, or the committee chair. So she did it. And eventually they passed the Violence Against Women Act, and a whole bunch of Republicans said, you're destroying the family. This means women that are beaten by their husband will have a shelter. And we don't want them to have a shelter. We want them to go home to their family, to keep the family together. And she's like, is that really what you want?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh my goodness. Yes. We have issues that we need to address in our country, in our culture. But
we certainly do.
Yes.
Anyway, so DNS Spook is here.
Yes,
it has a logo. It must be important.
It must be important because it's got its own website and its own logo.
Oh.
And spoiler, it's really overhyped, but out of a sense of professional obligation, given my relationship with DNS, I feel like I have to bring it up. This is a set of 7 vulnerabilities with CVEs that affect the rather popular DNS software / server called DNS Mask, which is very, very widely used for as a DNS caching forwarder and also as a DHCP server, among other things. And it's used mostly in consumer routers, but it's also used in some enterprise products. And it turns out that this open source, free open source software that's been run by and coded by the same guy for 20 years has some vulnerabilities in it, and some of them are kind of serious, including the possibility of remote code execution. So this organization, JSoft Tech, has really tried to hype it up. And the takeaway from all this is that everyone should try to patch it, because DNS mask is kind of important, but it is probably unlikely that anybody is going to hack your router over the internet.
Why is that unlikely? This does sound pretty serious.
I think we lost him.
I think we did lose him. Yeah,
I think his DNS got hacked.
yeah, I thought right, DNS must have got hacked. I mean, you got remote code execution on your DNS server. This sounds just as bad as the original one that Dan Kaminsky found. Anyway, I'd like to set it up and see it go. Anyway, all right, and then we got this one. Apparently, this has been known for like 15 or 20 years, that if you have a locked Linux box, all you have to do is plug in an external USB monitor and plug it in and out a few times, and it'll get past the lock screen. And this, apparently everyone has known this for 15 years. And it's still true with the modern versions of Ubuntu and other versions of Linux. And that sounds pretty awesome. I never knew this.
Wait,
Everyone else is saying, oh, everybody knows that.
Wait, is this for Ubuntu Budgie or?
Yeah, but they say
just...
it's been known for everything. Been known for all versions of Linux for many years. Really old trick. It's been known for 15 years, they say. They don't handle external monitors correctly. I would suspect it has something to do with X Windows and the other things that handle monitors.
That is interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, there are times that I find bugs, but I kind of scroll them away because they're more useful to me, than to,
this reminds me of all the Lockscreen bypasses on phones that kids find mostly, because all you do is push every button and make an emergency phone call and just try every option, and pretty soon there's some way to bypass the lock screen.
Yeah, I love Siri. Siri has been so wonderful to me for sending texts from Liz to her friends.
Oh, great. All you have to do is talk to the phone. Does Siri listen even when it's locked?
Yep.
Oh, isn't that charming?
And you can ask Siri to read your text messages and send text messages. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds great. This is the thing about security. All security is kind of like, those TSA locks where, please don't unlock this. Oh, come on. Anyway, all right. And then Liz has got this Russian protest. Oh, yeah. The big anti-Putin protest.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of cool where for multiple reasons, but the social media got pressured real hard to censor anything that was helping to organize the protests. And they actually had some success. They got, or at least they claim to have had some success with TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram with getting a bunch of the content removed, which is sort of freaky in and of itself. But they were successful in reducing it, but not eradicating it. And I mean, props to these guys. There's one picture in this article where they're out there protesting and it's 60 below zero. Like, yep. I am from the frozen north and I have never experienced 60 below zero and I can't even imagine it. Yeah, look at these guys.
Oh yeah.
They're out there and they are, I mean, that's some serious dedication to be having a march when it's 60 below zero.
Yeah. And they're really brave. I mean, I saw the one where they're throwing snowballs at the cops and they said, the only reason this worked is because the cops were going home for the night because they'd been just clubbing us and clobbering us all day. I mean, the Russian cops don't mess around. It's not like you have any actual right to protest there.
Right.
You're really just putting your head in the jaws of a tiger, messing with the Russian cops.
Yeah, and I had thought that Putin was going to step down. Apparently not. He is really doubling down. He's arrested that guy and his wife now.
Yeah. What made you think Putin was going to step down?
I had read something a while back saying that he was going to due to health reasons, but clearly that was
That was fake news, Liz.
Must have been.
Well, you know, the thing that struck me reading this, thinking about America, of course, is right now they're impeaching Trump because he told his supporters to go out and riot on his behalf. But when Navalny does the same thing, he's a hero. You know, that's why I think there's no chance of this impeachment going anywhere. I mean, in court, you're going to have a really hard time proving that what Trump did is that different than what people normally do. It is, I think, but I don't think you're going to be able to prove it worth a damn.
I still can't believe this guy went back to Russia after they tried to poison him. I mean, I
heard an article and they said the previous Russian protesters that left the country, immediately all the news media said, well, they've defected. They're traitors. I told you they were no good. You have to stick with Putin. And he said he knew that's what would happen if he didn't come back. So if you seriously want to get rid of Putin, you have to come back and become a martyr. Like the guy in South Africa. Was it Tutu, the guy that spent like 20 years in prison?
Yeah.
You have to go there and say, I'm staying here. I belong here. The other guy is wrong. You have to basically sacrifice your life if you want to have a political victory.
But I don't know that they're going to have political victory despite that. I think he's going to martyr himself to no end.
That is always the risk of any martyring.
We'll see.
Absolutely. And Putin seems pretty hard to dislodge, but I'm impressed at how Putin can't even assassinate anybody anymore. It seems like he's lost the thread. I mean, since when do the Russian assassins poison you and you live? I mean, what the hell? That seems to me to be a failure of having proper power. Anyway, so then we got Waza. Yeah, I remember I actually tried using this a few times.
One of the members of my team brought this tool up.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it's great. It's like a IPS. It's like if Splunk and an IPS came together.
Yeah.
And it, for all the purposes that we're going to implement it, it looks great. So I said, you know what? I should share this.
Have you tried using it yet?
I have myself. I haven't used it just yet. But I did see it in action, and so far, I think it's great. I'm definitely going to add this to the list of tools for my classes.
Oh yeah, about 4 years ago, I tried installing it and getting it running, and something turned out to be like pretty difficult and unpleasant, and I just moved to Splunk. But anyway,
yeah, this came from OSSEC. If anybody remembers that, they forked that and then built this infrastructure out. So I'm going to test it out more, but I think it's a good tool to add.
Oh yeah, it's got a good reputation. So I mean, it's definitely like an open source alternative to Splunk.
Yep.
Yeah, good. And GUIdra scripting for UPX. I might need to learn this.
Yeah. So I didn't know this, but you can apparently write scripts for GUIdra. So GUIdra is really, really getting up there. I mean, it has replaced IDA as my go-to, disassembler.
Yeah.
And it supports scripting, and you can do some pretty cool things with it. So it supports Java as well as Python. So thankfully, you don't have to touch Java if you don't want to, and I don't blame you. Even though GUIdra is famously a Java product somehow, and yeah, you can write these scripts. And this one shows you how to write a script that automatically handles UPX and packed executables. And for people at home that don't know what UPX is a sort of wrapper for executables. What you do is you can compress an executable sort of into itself. So when the executable starts, it runs a decompression function, which decompresses the code and then runs the program. And it's really popular among malware authors. And so this person goes over how to write a script that will automatically handle UPX encrypted binaries and automatically extract the data and stuff. And so this is good stuff. Now, I should note that this is sort of superfluous. If you have the UPX unpacker, you can use that to unpack the executable. And the way that this person wrote it, they just look for the string of UPX, and a common way of getting around reverse engineering is just rename it from UPX to, I don't know, PPX or something, and
Yeah,
it'll
yeah.
still run fine. But yeah, no, you can totally write these scripts now, and I think that's just something that people should know and make use of. So.
Oh yeah, and I've seen whole classes in GUIdra at like Black Hat and stuff. GUIdra is huge. Great, and I might have to throw that in my class. And then, yeah, I heard this. The M1 now runs Linux. Is this Alan?
Yay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there you
So Corellium, a company that first got attention for virtualizing iOS and then got sued by Apple as a result,
Yep.
has figured out how to port Linux to Apple's new M1 chip, which was a pretty tall task. And it's a fairly impressive accomplishment because, of course, Apple's M1 design is proprietary. It is ARM, but a lot of information is unknown, like microcode and lower level stuff for the chips. No documentation available.
Wow,
So they
I
had to
didn't
do
know that.
quite a lot of work, I'm sure, to make this work. But they managed to make it work. It's not really production yet. You know, it's got some shortcomings. So you probably don't want to start running Linux on your Mac just yet. But there may come a time when you can very easily do this, and it will give people who love Mac hardware but don't love Mac OS the opportunity to use Linux instead.
Wow, what a lot of work they had to go to. I didn't realize that Apple had gone this far in hiding their hardware. I thought when they switched to Intel, they knocked off this nonsense of taking the serial numbers off the chips and hiding the hardware. But I guess they've gone back into it big time.
Well, hey, you know, they don't want to give up all that valuable IP. This is their future, after all.
I guess. Oh, and you can revert back to, yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. All right. And then this one I thought was pretty interesting because it started because one of the Microsoft executives gave a town hall, Brad Smith, Microsoft president, and he said the unspeakable out loud, which is what Bill Gates said, by the way, when Microsoft had antitrust lawsuit. He said, the result of the antitrust lawsuit is I learned that we need to start making political contributions to campaigns. And here's Brad Smith just saying it out loud because they said, hey, you were supporting all those congressmen that tried to overthrow the election, even though they're totally against all reasonable values. And they said, yes, we always support every congressman, even when they're totally evil and defy all of our values, because we have to. And the reason you have to is because you just have to pay a bribe in America to survive as a company. That's what we learned. And he said, there, in the past, so if I can find it, there. The point is, if you don't donate to their campaign, then you can't call anybody and they will just pass a law stealing your money and shutting down your company, and no congressperson will take your call because you didn't donate to their campaign. So that's it. You have to give them money. You have to go to the parties. You have to support the political action committee with a lot of money. And then when you need help, somebody will pick up the phone and help you. That's how it works. They call this pishkesh in other cultures. You have to pay a bribe in order to get any government service. And that's where we are. And as far as I can tell, that's pretty much where we've always been. And this is why I think, Bernie is right. We need to get the money out of politics, but no existing politician will go along with that, of course, because they're all there standing on a mountain of bribes to get where they are. And rocking the boat will collapse the whole house of cards. And anyway, so the internals at Microsoft have tried to make a proposal saying, how about Microsoft actually just support their values instead of just bribing every politician, regardless of how evil they are? And this is what idealists always say, and we'll see what happens. Whether Microsoft wants to become idealistic in support for democracy itself. I notice, for the record, that I've able to predict that the Democratic administration will very shortly start breaking up high-tech companies with antitrust. And they say the first one to go is Facebook. Everybody hates Facebook. But after that, it's going to be Google and maybe Amazon. But Microsoft is not on the list anymore. And they haven't been for a decade or so. So I think paying these bribes works. Anyway, it's an interesting issue to watch and real important for the future of tech companies. And now we got smartphone data without warrants. I think we saw this one.
Oh, okay.
Something like it. No, maybe not. No, we saw one related to it, huh?
Possibly. This is just interesting because it
Yeah.
sort of abstracts the whole like warrantless the warrantless information gathering out, and they go directly to the source and just buy this data from private data brokerage companies. And we had talked about it in the past in that there was, I believe there was a story where the Muslim Pro app had gotten the data from that, had gotten sold to a data broker, and the U.S. Defense and Military Intelligence had used it, used that info. And we can see, you know, how that's a slippery slope. And, you know, one thing I do appreciate about Ron Wyden is he's kind of on top of this stuff. He's one of the few legislators that actually seems to care about, you know, looking out for privacy, Americans' privacy when they're using this stuff. But I mean, it almost seems like he's alone on this island. I really don't hear much out of the legislature on this regularly. So, and it's just low on the priority list. But you know, again, this is another slippery slope where if we don't start to check this stuff, it's gonna, I mean, we're already sort of headed towards the digital surveillance panopticon, and it's really exploded a lot over the past few years. But you know, things like this contribute to it. And another issue that was mentioned in the article that's kind of important is that these data brokerage companies don't discriminate who they sell this data to. So
Right.
foreign governments, threat actors, you name it, it's all there just to be bought and sold. So,
And Facebook had been just
Yeah.
handing it over to people who want to subvert democracy, cause people to get executed, spread misinformation.
right. And you know, we've seen some evidence of how this can play out with the Uyghurs in China, and the way that governments leverage this data to really harm people, and I mean to the point of ethnic cleansing and everything else. So
Yeah. Excuse me, I'm trying to fix a shadow problem with my camera.
Oh, I thought you were applying a filter.
Well, you could put it that way. I'm going to have to apply a lower check filter. There. All right. Anyway, so all right, and then we got the top cybersecurity challenges of 2021. You know, it seems to me like we don't know that yet.
Right. So that's kind of why I brought this up. Kind of want to see reactions from the group. So their 5 is more complex cybersecurity challenges, which may
5 challenges.
Yeah. If you scroll down further,
Okay.
their number 1, you skipped it just a bit, is more complex cybersecurity challenges.
Okay.
Like, okay, kind of obvious. Fragmented and complex regulations.
Well, okay. All right. It
Yeah,
isn't about management.
GDPR, CCPA, so on and so forth. Dependence on other parties. And they bring up FireEye and SolarWinds. Lack of cybersecurity expertise. Hello, we have students that you can hire.
Yeah.
And difficulty tracking cyber criminals.
Okay. Well, up at this management level, I guess they do know. Yeah, these are the long-term trends. I was thinking at a more technical level where things change faster.
Me too, at first.
But,
and I'm looking at it going, I mean, you could say the same thing for last year.
well, sure you could. That's why.
The same thing in 2001, I feel.
Yeah, right. Like it hasn't really changed.
But, you know, up at the level of policy setting, they're quite correct. And that's where a lot of our students are going. I got a lot of students taking the management classes. You know, that's a big part of it.
well, it's huge, and I think it's often very much neglected because you know, if you don't have sound standards and policies in place, then that's the only driver for implementation for security practices. So
Yeah, this is why I'm really glad we got this series of talks from FireEye and related companies that are mostly at sort of a management level, because it really is an important thing for students to understand and an important direction a lot of them probably want to go. And then we got a GPS problem.
Right. So GPS is part of, for people, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what GPS is, but if you are new, GPS stands for Global Positioning System. It's part of the Global Navigation Satellite Systems. Basically, it's America's satellites that send down data that allows you to know where you are. And the way it works is it's basically trigonometry. Each satellite is connected or synced with an atomic clock. And because all signals can only travel at the speed of light, you can tell how far away you are from these satellites by essentially reading the time off of them and then doing some trigonometry to figure out where you are on Earth. They're actually kind of far off. They're not in geostationary orbit, but they're also not in that like low Earth orbit. So they are sort of in that middle area where, so a lot of the low Earth orbit satellites use the GPS-2 to figure out where they are. So it's really critical for our infrastructure to have these satellites. Unfortunately, they were put up in a long time ago, I think in the 70s. And they did not have cybersecurity in mind when they went up. And so they are trivially spoofed and taken down and messed with. People who, for example, ride ships, like cargo ships to Russia, sometimes find their GPS showing them inland or disappearing altogether. And that's pretty bad. But certainly, only the nation states have that kind of capability. Well, no, I mean, you can go down and get some GPS spoofers, and kids are using it to cheat at Pokemon Go and stuff. I mean, it's really trivial. And the signals are so weak. I can't even, I have no idea how it works. If you try to grab signals from GPS and just look at the waterfall, all you're going to see is static. I mean, the signals are that weak. You have to do some very, very fancy mathematics to get it to work. And then of course you have to be like in a wide open space, and then maybe you might get a signal lock, but I mean, it's just a disaster. So there's some calls to essentially get a backup up and running. That'll be more resilient against jamming, which will be more resilient against people trying to take down this important infrastructure, which we need for our transport systems, like for a bunch of our other infrastructure requires it, because they do run on atomic clocks that are essentially our clocks. So like cell phone towers, for example, the way that the cell phone towers know exactly what time it is and to sync it with your phone is because the cell phone towers just grab the time from the GPS satellites. So we need these things up. We need them running 24/7, but unfortunately they're just old and easily just messed with. So in 2018, there was a 2-year, referendum saying you must have a backup system up by the year 2000. The year 2020. And unfortunately, nothing has happened yet. But we definitely need one sooner rather than later.
And this proposal, E-LORAN, would not use satellites. So some things you could definitely do the same thing without satellites. Yeah.
That's certainly a possibility. I don't know how that would work over the seas.
Yeah.
But you can certainly do something similar with, for example, cell phone towers. If you are connected to 3 or more cell phone towers, you can triangulate your position. So you could do a land-based system. You can do more space-based systems, but you just need backups. You can't just have these, weak, almost ineffective satellites running your critical infrastructure that can be easily spoofed. At the very least, make the signal stronger. I mean, yeah, like I said, if you're not in like a wide open area with really good receiving capabilities, it is nearly impossible to go get a straight pure GPS lock. Usually your phone does a lot of tricks, including what I told you with the with the cell phone signals, you know, to help the GPS get a lock. But if you just want to use GPS alone, yeah, it is a struggle to get a signal.
Wow.
Isn't there a way that hackers have isn't there a way this has been used in some of the commercial shipping hacks or takeovers? I think I read something
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, I read something about that too. Yeah, you definitely. And like I said, you can totally make ships think they're somewhere where they're not by disrupting their GPS comms. And like I said, the signals are coming in so weak that it's really easy to spoof.
I think this would be a real DoD problem too.
It
'cause-
is. Yeah, a lot of our missiles and
Yeah.
weapons run on GPS.
I know the missiles rely on this. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad. And there was an extra one here for Liz. Beware. Oh, the wormable Android. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought this was cool because it's pretty artfully done and clever in that, you know, a lot of users, especially, you know, if you're using a Huawei phone, you get something like this pop up and it looks like it's authentic software that you need some kind of integration or expansion pack that you need to install to be able to use it. So I thought that was a pretty clever way of going about it. Apparently
Well,
it's
I like this URL.
Yeah. Right.
Settings.pw is the actual domain, but that isn't obvious.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, exactly. I mean, it looks pretty legit the way that they've done it. So I can see how this would be pretty successful in infecting a lot of users.
Yeah.
So I had to include that little bonus on there.
Oh yeah, I'm really glad to see it because this is like, you know, in my mobile device hacking class, we make malicious altered apps and people say, well, how could that hurt you? And this is a good example.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it's interesting too, where this is another case of it being able to take over and send out messages to contacts on your list who you trust typically, you know.
Like the I love you
and-
worm.
Exactly. And also, I thought it was kind of cool in that this is yet another one where they can use it to not only extract data from other applications that are running on your device, but also to be able to harvest credentials that you're entering into other sites or applications that you're using.
And is it connected to Huawei? No, it's just a fake Huawei app. It could be anything.
No. Yeah, it's totally fake.
Yeah, neat. Okay. Well, that's a good one. All right. I think that's it. Any other comments? Well, I'm going to stop this recording if I can find the button.